The Matrix is back and messing with all of us.
Indeed. In a good way, whereas perceived by many as if it's fucking with them.
Yeah, I was gonna say, well, we were just talking for hours about how Matrix is currently fucking with me, and actually, um, serendipitously, it sort of goes into a lot of the questions that I got for this week. So let's dive in, shall we?
Let's do it.
Um, so one of the things that I wanted to know from your perspective, modalities, Matrix kind of as a as a concept, as a being, as a thing, um, what is it that causes change to happen? What is
Change
the
within
driver?
person or change in the events around in the environment.
All of it. All of it. Because, it,
Okay.
it it seems like everybody, including myself, they desire something to be different, whether that's something different about their circumstances, something different about what they're doing, something different about their life. Like there's some sort of change that they want to occur. And so when we look at it from that perspective of of the matrix, of the universe, like what is it that actually causes change to happen?
Okay. So I'll start in an interesting place that I think is very important, and then we'll tie all the pieces together. So there's this construct of timelines, and in spirituality, a lot of people talk about shifting into different timelines. There are more positive, negative timelines. There are like let's call them planetary timelines. Like people talk about, oh, this planet is on this timeline, and we're going to hell, or now the planet has shifted to this timeline and everything will be rosy and great. So
Hmm.
first of all, to understand it's important to understand this concept of timelines. So the way when a soul loads into the body, when the consciousness loads into this body, or whatever definition or whatever vocabulary you want to use, it also preloads with this so-called what we call incarnation program. And this incarnation program allows um, an avatar to and the soul to achieve specific results, because this is loading into this world of forms, or into this body, let's call it, is quite expensive energetically, and maintaining this whole game or simulation, as they call it in Silicon Valley, right, or this matrix, is quite expensive energetically. So, and there is actually a whole line of souls that want to go into these bodies, because that's where you can get a lot of evolutionary experience in a very short span of time. And one of the reasons it's possible, because you know how in your soul there are different dominating energies, and in each energy is different color, is just different vibration or different color of light.
Hmm.
So it has different qualities. So your dominating energy is love and wisdom, and so it's yellow and blue. When you load out of this body, let's say your soul has a lot of yellow, it exists in specific sector of universe where it's predominantly yellow. Because same as you look at the rainbow, right? It's hard for yellow to touch blue or to
Yeah.
touch green, because it exists in a different vibrational level. It's a different quality of energy. So the beauty, when the consciousness loads into this body, it can touch any shape and form of energy. Hence, the evolution accelerates. So, hence, r- before loading in here, the soul designs a program. Here are the qualities and the energies I want to develop. So ultimately, everything, when we talk about karma, I don't know, talents, purpose, and all that, is all about learning how to interact with different qualities of energy, different colors of energy, and etc. So to make that incarnation that is already energetically quite expensive productive, there's a program design. Same as you go to a university, you go to Stanford, you pay whatever now it costs, I don't know, $500,000 $1 million. there's a program, so you come out with something at the end. Now it's a less of a thing that you come out of with. Before it was probably more valuable and more aligned with needs of the world, right?
Hmm.
So similarly, there's this program. Incarnation program is just major milestones of things that need to be learned, but how you do it, that's where free will comes in. You can do all types of thing per se. And yes, there is free will, but part of the free will is illusion and part of the free will is real. And where it is an illusion that you can do anything and everything. No, you can't, because you have specific milestones that the whole environment will push you toward. And that's where we come to timelines. And so let's say a person loads in depending on how advanced the soul is and depending how much learning there is to be done. The soul can have, let's call it 1,000 constructive timelines and 1,000 destructive, or let's call them emotionally psychological punishing timelines, or like negative timelines. For simplicity of a purpose, we're going to call them positive and negative timelines. So in total, let's say for this soul, for this purpose, for this person, there are 2,000 timelines. And in those, what those timelines are kind of theatrical sets. In each timeline, there's a different theatrical sets of objects, people, events, and etc. that are accessible. And so if you're in a positive timeline, then you're surrounded, let's say you're in the most positive, 1,000 positive timeline. You're surrounded by people who are always trying to help you, give you extra resources, connect you with other right people who'll give you the right knowledge, interaction with the right energy, blah, blah, blah. You come to the job, you're given bonus, like the whole environment is supporting you. So that's the most positive timeline. The most negative timeline, you just get kicked in the balls over and over again. So you start paying attention. Why you start asking yourself a question: why are you here? And what is this whole simulation and how it works? And those usually are for the people who are so off track of their incarnation program. It's like you came to Stanford to do computer science, but you're taking art classes. And but then at the end of the day, you want to get computer science degree, and they're like, and the dean or whoever, the administrators go, dude, you have no mathematics, no computer science, no classes based on which we can issue you the computer science diploma, because all of your stuff is arts, I don't know, philology, whatever it is, unrelated to computer science. So people who drop to negative timelines, there are a few reasons. One, they're like so distracted, going in the wrong direction. So basically none of the learning is happening. And the matrix through, or ultimately the soul through that instrument is trying to realign you. Another reason why somebody drops to negative timelines, they could be on the way to in the right direction, learning the right things, but they're just so negative about it. They're like, this life sucks, this matrix sucks, everything fucking sucks. Well, since you're vibrating that energy, you'll have all those learnings just surrounded by people who, like, you walk out on the street, they steal your phone, you come to the job, say, well, that job doesn't exist anymore, go look for another one, right? It's like, so if you want to have change happen in a more pleasant environment and happen, I even say probably accelerates change because you're so supported and you're willing to go for even more change, versus when you're in this negative timeline, you're defending, you're like, I don't want to change, I need to defend, and etc. It becomes
Hmm.
even harder to change, right? But ultimately still drags you through shit and dirt and gets you where it needs to go. Or if you don't get there, then the avatar ultimately starts having health problems and exits incarnation. Or as we also call it, changes dimension. You're not in a world of form anymore. You go back, review everything that unfolded. And I referred already multiple times the cartoon by Pixar, Soul. It shows really well how that works. You go review all your fuck ups, your positives, and etc. Design another incarnation wherever you deserve a right and enough energy to load into the world of forms. You load again into the world of forms to reattempt that again. And there's specific. And since we're on this topic, I want to touch on some technicalities and some advanced stuff here. we've talked about this planet is advanced evolutionary school, and the V5 matrix, we've talked about it extensively, is really about harmonizing, uh, learning, interacting with energies via harmonizing personality traits. So people work on themselves, and
Hmm.
that's how we learn to interact with different energies. We get triggered, we get emotionally destabilized, and we're like, oh, clearly we don't know how to interact with this type of a person, this type of event. I need to figure out how to interact in this situation without being unbalanced, angry, emotional, and etc. V6 will continue the evolution. It's going to be through creation. All the everybody who will transition, their characters will be harmonized. So it's like we can interact with anyone and everyone. But now we're like, how do we join different types of energies to create something more advanced, bigger, scalable, and etc. And of course, there will be different challenges as part of co-creation. We've tried this energy and this material and it didn't work out and we didn't get the result we want. Okay, how do we tweak it to get the result we want? So we will evolve by facing challenges in creation. So coming back, you like we load it in, and there are different timelines, positive and negative. Um, how do we shift between timelines? The simple one, and by the way, we recommend it to everyone. And there's a guy, I think his name is Alex Icon. He's a guy from Toronto now. He lives in London. We've kind of been in the same circles, but we're not friends. And I should include the link to it. He created the so-called 5-minute journal, and you just every night and the morning write what you're grateful for. This is one of the most powerful life hacks of shifting into positive timelines. And like he sees the impact on people. I've seen the impact of people. Like there are over 100 people worked in my last company. We had a stack of those books. We gave it out to everyone. We bought hundreds of those journals. I filled out probably at least 4 or 5 of those journals, even in the shittiest times of my life. That thing pulled me out and put me in a more pleasant, first of all, more pleasant state, hence more pleasant timeline. The timeline still had its challenges, but they were far away from being rough. And today, early on the call, I shared with you timelines of some of my friends
Yeah.
who are that are extremely rough. So I went through some rough timelines, but never to such an extent. So where I'm going with this, the most powerful life hack there is before, and it's important. So they suggest doing the journaling in the morning and at night, and people misunderstand it. Everybody's obsessed with morning rituals. Morning rituals, the day starts when you go to bed, not when you wake up. And that's the biggest misconception and misperception. So the most important thing to set up the day is right before you go to sleep, because that's where a lot of energetic integration happens. That's when a lot of subconscious programming happens. Beyond that, that's when matrix shifts timelines. That's when you reboot and you wake up to a new timeline. So if you go to bed frustrated, angry, anxious, worried after a hectic day, you just downshift it into a shittier timeline. And then you do it again, and then you do it again, and then you do it again, and then you start getting surprised. Why the fuck is life is getting worse and worse? Whereas if you do that gratitude journal, and that's one of the instruments, and it's just the simple ones. You can even no need to buy this journal. If you buy it, great. You support the creator, and it works, and it's very easy, and it's set up really well. You can just really sit and remember all the things you're grateful. So you bring in yourself to the state of gratitude. And the most important thing, because some people fill out the journal, but they don't feel the gratitude. But there's a higher chance when you do the mechanical action of filling it out that you will connect with that sense of gratitude. The most important thing is just to catch that sense of gratitude. Gratitude is one of the highest vibrational states. Guess what? You go in the state of gratitude, you wake up in the next timeline, next timeline, next timeline, next timeline,
Oh.
and becomes easier. With that said, I'm going to add one last thing, and then we can double click on that. With that said, we still carry this energetic distortion in us that don't permit us to go right away, let's say, to the most positive. So if there is some kind of trauma in us where we're, let's say, jealous, angry, greedy, whatever the low vibrational energy that is stuck in us, uh, because we've misunderstood the world previously, or because that's something we brought here from previous lives because we actually want to resolve it, those things won't allow us to shift to that best, most positive gear. And that's where we're pushed through different events in Matrix to notice them and identify them and deal with them. And here are two examples. Let's say somebody is greedy. They can learn that. They can be, because they're generally very positive, optimistic, they go grateful or happy to bed and wake up in more positive timelines. So let's say they can get it to 500 out of 1,000, and then all this low vibrational energy doesn't allow them to go further, and they come to a at work. Let's say they always negotiate hard with vendors. They try to get the best deal. So there's this greed, and they don't realize that it has to be fair energetic exchange. And uh, and then somebody does that to them in their life. They're buying a fridge, and they buy a fridge, instead of paying 800, they pay 1,000, and then go to another store and it's 800, but they cannot refund now because there's a special deal in the other store and that was the condition. And they're like, fuck. And if they get it in that moment, so not a rough experience, like it's everything is pretty positive and dandy, right?
Yeah.
It's a soft nudge, okay, you got screwed out of $200, but not screwed out. There is a reason. I was like, oh, you know what, maybe I was like pulling, like being so hard on all these people. I should be just easier and really look for fairness, you know and so that's a positive way of change. If you're in minus 500, let's call it timeline, the same experience is, you're going along your life and you have, let's say, $1 million in a bank account, and you put 900K in crypto, and somebody hacks a crypto exchange. Just recently happened to somebody close I know, and one of their accounts was empty. Not even their account specifically, just the storage of one of the major crypto exchanges. So that's a rougher one, like bigger amount came out of nowhere, all your life savings, blah, blah, blah. The list goes on. So we can learn all this in a different context, and coming back to change can be experienced in very different ways. And it's really up to us, when we understand how the matrix works, how to create change from a more harmonious place, and how to create change from very rough spots.
So a couple things I want to double click on there, because they're also related to some trainings and learnings that I recently went through. So first, I totally forgot about Alex Icon. So I remember seeing, I think it was his wife on London Real like 10 years ago or something. I remember there was a yeah, when the 5 minute journal came out. So it was a flashback reminder that you just gave me of that. Um I want to talk about the free will illusion.
Mm,
Because this is
yeah,
really something that
yeah,
was
yeah.
talked about this weekend, and I want your take on it because
Sam Harris talks about that extensively, but I don't think he arrives at any decent answer. I think he's more lost than clear on many topics, actually.
yeah, well, no, this was just in the sense of the NLP work. And this is also kind of funny because I notice where I could get not triggered necessarily, but it's like interesting how sometimes people will use the word God, and then some people will come up with any other term to say the same thing except that. Like that word
Yeah,
alone
yeah.
is so tricky. So
Source, creator, absolute.
this was creative director of the universe, right?
Yeah.
Which so but in that there was this the concept was that the the CDU, or the creative director of the universe, will not say no to anything. And it's because if it said no to anything, it will violate your free will. So this is why it whatever that you want
Yeah.
is available. Like, okay, we want war. It was the
Yeah.
and it was a takeoff of uh, an old Jerry Seinfeld episode, Comedians Getting Coffee, where the the comedian on with Jerry Seinfeld is coming up with this comedic skit where he's basically the director will say yes to everything, like he won't say no to anything. So it's like, okay, but it's that concept. It's like famine, yes, wars, yes,
Yeah.
cancer, yes, and devil worshippers drinking blood. Yes, right? Like, just it won't say no. It might
Yeah.
wince a little bit, but it's still going to just say yes. And so, so talk to me more about this free will illusion, because I do get a felt sense sometimes, and this is what I'd like to go into. When you're looking at the Matrix,
Yeah.
where does, and maybe it's the wrong terms, but it is the terms that most people tend to use, where they think of like fate, destiny, things of this nature.
Hmm.
So does the Matrix always have a highway that you're going on, and and so that highway itself is not free will? Um but your
Let
decision to get on the highway is free will? Or tell me a little bit about the
Yeah,
free
yeah,
will
yeah.
illusion.
Let's
Yeah,
unpack this,
'cause there's a
and I'll
lot
start in
here.
this example. Yeah. Uh, so imagine you're on an island, and you're like, I want to eat wagyu beef, and there's no cows on that island.
Yeah.
It's free will for you to eat wagyu beef. Yes, I choose to eat wagyu beef, but there are no fucking cows on the island. So you
Mhm.
can eat wagyu beef as much as you want on the island that has no cows, and that's basically that concept of free will. But it's also being partially illusion. So first of all, yes, free will. The God says yes, there is free will, like ultimate free will. That's one of the universal laws. However, it's limited by, first of all, other universal laws. If you have free will to kill another human and you break universal law and it is malicious, well, you broke another universal law, that will come back to you. Have you expressed free will? You have expressed free will. Things will be rebalanced in universe. Next, in this sector of universe, planet Earth, V5 matrix, and then we've talked a bunch about V6 matrix. The free will has been uh, extensively narrowed to Incarnation program. And what I mean by that, I'm going to tie the piece to the island without the cows. If you're in a specific timeline where there are no cows, doesn't fucking matter how much free will you're going to express. If that's not part of a theatrical set, you can free will yourself as much as you want, but there are no cows on the island, you're not going to have that stake. And that's why it's so important to understand that context of timelines, and that's why I think a lot of people are very frustrated right now. Right? Somebody's like, through the technology, we got so interconnected that we're looking at somebody else's timeline, and in their timeline there is a yacht and a Ferrari and a mansion. In your timelines, there's not a timeline that has that. And because all the values have been distorted, rather than optimizing for the core value of happiness, because that means a complete alignment, um, people are optimizing for all types of stuff, for yacht, money, and whatever. And that is not in any way a metric of you successfully completing your incarnation program or your degree. It's same as saying you go to Stanford computer science and you've drawn 17 pictures and you say, give me the degree. And they're like, no, you haven't coded a single line of code, but I've drawn 17 paintings. Not applicable to computer science degree. So that's what's happening with most of the people right now. They load for a specific incarnation program and they optimize for metrics that are no way related to the energies they came to learn here. And then they're asking for diploma, and then they're surprised why they're not happy. And what's interesting is people who intuitively align can be living in a tiny village in the middle of nowhere and will be 100x happier than a guy who's sitting on a yacht and has Ferrari parked in a yacht and has a submarine and etc. So this whole distortion of material metrics being somehow an indication of a human being successful on this planet or not is a remnant of the V5 distorted version of V5 matrix, because there was a bunch of bloatware that was installed onto that matrix by, and we've chatted on previous in previous episodes about other civilizations that where they brought those values. So here, to simplify it, we do have free will. There are other universal laws. If we through via our free will we break universal laws, then things will catch up to us very fast. With that said, this version of the matrix created bumper, what are those called, like bumper sides on the road, so you don't weave off so hard that you get so hardly corrected that the avatar dies or removed from this game. So hence those limitations were introduced so that there is a higher chance of success for a person to complete their incarnation program. And what's important to understand here, some people, when they learn, I was like, oh, so it's so there's fate, there's destiny, and I'm limited, I have no free will. No, that's not true. You can choose to do fuck all and not complete anything, and there will be one outcome of life. Or you can choose to do a lot of things that are misaligned, will be different outcome. Then you can choose some aligned things and some misaligned things, will be completely different outcome, right? So the free will is still there. However, when a person starts like, oh, I'm being limited by this incarnation program, fuck all this, I have free will. Yes, you do have free will. Go enjoy, see which timeline you end up in. Probably the one at the bottom of the stack of the timelines. And just before the recording, I shared with you a few examples of timelines where people thought they're the shit, and they were told by multiple people, like, hey, don't go here. Yes, you've had this experience, and this experience ends here. And if you continue down this path, it becomes destructive, and the matrix will course correct. And it's like a spring, and the further you go there, it's like a spring that gets pulled, and then gets released, and you get smacked with that spring. And the further you pull, the harder you get smacked. And that is also part of free will. However, you can only stretch that spring so far, and that's why there are timelines. So if somebody has 1,000 negative, 1,000 positive timelines, they can stretch the spring to minus 1,500. And that's that highway, as you called, within which we evolve. And if we remove those, let's call them limitations, or they're not even limitations, the proper word, guiding bumpers, because they're trying to make you successful. They're not trying to penalize you. If we remove them, then to get a computer science degree here is going to be almost impossible. Well, quote unquote, computer science degree, right? Because then with free will and so much choice, as you said, everything from war to famine to great success and great creation, you're just going to get fucking lost. So let's say your job is to become a computer scientist, but you end up in a timeline where in a desert in Africa, where there's not a thing that's called computers. Okay, now there are cell phones everywhere, but you end up in that, let's say 20 years ago or 50 years ago, right?
Mm-hmm.
And like, how the fuck do I become a computer scientist? I only see zebras and giraffes and all types of plants and trees. Whereas if somebody's supposed to study plants and the medicinal qualities of plants, that's a perfect place to incarnate in. So, and that's those guiding bumpers. So there's already preset theatricals where everything exists in your surrounding to succeed. But because the mind is so lost, and there has been so much importance put on thinking, people accumulated a bunch of mental constructs and lived their life through mental constructs rather than through sensations or what we call intuition. And as a result, they struggle to align. Everything is already in their theater, in their timeline, but they're like, Let's say one of the timelines we were briefly touching on is a person, and I think this person will be watching this podcast, so hi to that person. The person's supposed to be leading large number of people, and there were multiple scenarios where it was presented, but he chooses to be an entrepreneur. I'm like, I want to be an entrepreneur, but the challenge was being an entrepreneur. You can kind of get to lead to a lot of people, but that's not necessarily the first step in entrepreneurship because you start with one, then you hopefully you find co-founder, hopefully you hire somebody. And yes, you can get to entrepreneurship if you first go and lead bunch of people and you've like given, because that person contains that energy as superpower. So that person needs to share that superpower with the world. And then the matrix opens up next doors of evolution for him. So he can go lead bunch of people and then through that go start a company because he's given that. And right away, he can probably start a company within a company as an example. So he is given right away a larger team and a budget or etc. Or he can right away, let's say, like earns credibility by leading a department or subdivision or business unit. And then Matrix goes, well, why don't we give you 50 million for your seed round so you can hire right away a team of 30 to 50 people so you're not starting with n of one or two. So all of those things are actually those guiding bumpers, which people perceive as limitations, are making things easier. But, and I'm going to touch on another very important concept, and we briefly touched on it. We have reptilian mind, and nobody's even hiding it. Uh, yes, we have part of our DNA is from reptilian civilization, a low vibrational civilization that lived in a world of scarcity, not enough energy, not enough resources, and etc. etc. What does reptilian mind do? It needs to control things to create illusionary safety. It needs to plan everything. It needs to survive. It always feels there is not enough, constant state of scarcity. That's not the original part of us, but that's part of the DNA that was introduced and we deal with it. So where it leads, the mind becomes overly powerful managing our life, but mind is a basic calculator. The only job of a mind, there are few, but the main job of a mind, make sure this avatar doesn't die, but it took it too seriously through the distortions of scarcity, hence it's always trying to control, accumulate, and etc. Versus in reality, rather than using mind to navigate this life, what most of the population on this planet has lost is using sensations and
Mm.
emotions and feelings to navigate this life. Because that part of our being does not lie. But everybody like something, let's say they face something, first thing that activates is their mind. How do I deal with this situation? How do I deal with this person? How do I interact with this person? Is there partnership? Is there friendship? Do I hire them or their asshole? It's all through mind. The problem was the mind only takes in the inputs or the data from basic sensors of this avatar, which is vision, smell, hearing, touch. Hence, when you face a person, if you like how they look, your judgment will be more positive.
Yeah.
Guess what? That person could be the biggest fucking asshole in the world and came to take everything from you, but smells and looks great. And so when we operate from the mind, that's how we operate from like this depths of data. Whereas feelings and sensations, all that is connected to consciousness. And that takes in trillions of data points. And hence, when a person comes to our field, if we're more balanced and we don't allow our mind to run off and our reptilian mind to activate, right? Then we're like, this person's energy feels strange. I'm feeling contraction in my stomach where I feel strange. And I was like, well, because that person came to take everything from you. But people have been now taught for generation over generation over generation, feelings and emotions are bad for business. Thinking is what gets you forward. And that's why
Mm.
the planet is where it is right now. Everybody's fighting with each other, anxious, scared, worried, panic attacks, suicides. Like, well, the list goes on. And I'll pause here.
Yeah, it's interesting. Would you equate because I've heard it in a different way, but maybe it's exactly the same. Would you equate the reptilian mind with the critter brain, like almost that internal small part of our brains, which is only its only purpose and things it is really searching for is, are we alive? Yes or no? It's just controlling breathing, autonomic, nervous systems, and just looking out for, uh, am I breathing? Am I eating? And am I procreating? And that's it.
No.
Is it the same thing kind of, or?
Well, similar. So it was the original basic function of that has been expanded, and so basically, what they attribute the reptilian mind to, or the term you've used, is the survival.
Mhm,
But then it has become a substantially larger part of our operations, or the way this avatar is operated, and it takes over most of the reasoning slash behavior and etc. It's so strongly expressed, right? Like, you take men, they're like hunting women, procreate. Like, as a result, it leads to so much misbehavior, right? That is
mhm,
not aligned. Survive, accumulate. Somebody's gonna stab you, steal things from you. So many thoughts, versus when you actually are in your senses and you exit that program, because it can be overridden. Even though it's part of the DNA is flexible and has been studied, proven. Now DNA evolves, and DNA is the closest connection between energy and the world of forms. So if we change our mindset, DNA changes. So if
mm,
we and mindset is energy. And so, for example, every time I have major transformations, I eat a lot of chocolate. And there are times where I need a lot of dairy products, which I think has calcium, something else. And that an indication to me, whatever chocolate has and whatever dairy has is actually necessary for DNA transformation. And there's like now more and more research coming out about all that stuff. So, and like, for example, one study that is very simple and clear, where DNA is shaped by energy. You take electromagnetic waves, you expose replicating DNA to electromagnetic waves. DNA that is produced with the influence of electromagnetic waves, without, is different. And then the type of electromagnetic waves and frequencies change the result of what you get as a result of replication. So same thing, and since we're energetic beings, our worldview is our energy, an energetic state, because thought is energy, emotion is energy, all that. So our thoughts and emotion shape our DNA. So as we change our worldview and our attitudes, we change our DNA. So that part of that reptilian brain, or part of the reptilian brain that is part of our DNA, can be overridden. Where else it has seen as an example that our DNA is changeable. You can take a same person who has gone through significant evolution, and look at their photo pre that evolution and post. Their features of the face, like so many things in their body, change. And you take a person who is stagnant and hasn't gone through any transformation and evolution, their face is going to look exactly the same. Yes, it gets like some like age features, like maybe like a little bit more gray hair, a little bit more wrinkles. But if you even take a shorter period, then like even that hasn't changed. So as a result, we are truly creators when we say, because we create this body too, we change this body, we can override this body. And once that insight's fully unlocked, you realize, whoa, I can change things in my body. And that's the stuff I play with. That's how I healed a lot of things. I was like, oh, okay, this health problem is related to this inharmonious worldview or this inharmonious attitude. Because worldview are mental constructs, that's our mental field. Attitude is our feelings, and mood is a prolonged feeling. An emotion is just a feeling that is formed towards some kind of external object. So when our dominating mood shifts, uh, our attitude changes, right? So, and this whole concept, bringing it back to gratitude and the 5 minute journal, and I feel like we're doing great promotion for them here, and that's great. I think it's a great instrument. Then we start waking up like in a more positive timeline, and we're reprogramming our body. We're also reshaping our body because our mood changes, our attitude changes, our uh, energetic composition changes. Hence, the and energy is primary. This body is just a reflection of energy, which the steps: energy, DNA, body, right?
Mm,
So that's, and to answer your question, yes, that part of the mind has been so expanded and taken over our world, and that was reinforced through culture, which was managed by reptilians, insectoids, greys, and etc. for extended period of time on this planet. Hence, all of those values of scarcity, competition, greed, blah blah blah, the list goes on, became part of that DNA part of our reptilian brain, and hence we're trying to control how things unfold to create this illusionary safety. And it's part of the culture where we're trained to think, 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 because it is easier to manage people who are disconnected from feelings. If they're disconnected from feelings, they're disconnected from the true indicators of where there is energy to help them uh, live, grow, and prosper, and where there's no energy, or where the energy will be taken away. So they will shrink and become weaker and easier to manage and control. So hence, since everybody's stuck in their mind, they are guessing. They're constantly going through trial and error. And in reality, if you look at a lot of successful people, they're actually very intuitive and they openly talk about it. And then they always say, everybody has some kind of version of expression. I don't know what I did. The stars have aligned. And that's an indication they've just intuitively arrived there. Their mind cannot explain it because they just sense they should do something that was not rational, logical. Like Jeff Bezos' example comes to mind when he launched Prime. Everybody on his team thought it was the biggest insanity ever to give everyone shipping for free at $9 a month, because financially, modeling wise, it did not make any sense. But shipping was the biggest friction point in the early days of e-commerce. He completely changed the concept of how you purchase things. People would go to the store because they could try them on, they could touch them because you don't have to pay shipping. But now, if shipping is free, I can order them and ship them back, and I don't pay for that. So I can order stuff, and most of the people are lazy to ship things back. And when they got them all, even if it's not that great, I want to keep it because I don't want to part with it. Blah 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 blah. The list goes on. Super counterintuitive, and the whole team was like, he thought he was crazy. But that's the type of a decision that's made when a person felt it's like a huge amount of energy was flowing in that direction. And if he makes that decision, the company will be, something will positive will unfold. It's not rational. Yes, now we have rational explanation. Oh, it's friction, blah blah blah. Like as a Steve Jobs, and I love repeating that phrase, says, we can only connect the dots looking backwards. And then, of
yeah.
course, looking backwards, we've created a lot of amazing case studies for business schools, and he's genius. But like, there are a bunch of interviews from him where he's like, it's like, I don't know, the things just aligned, you know? Yeah, I'm pretty smart, but the things just aligned. So
Yeah.
hence, it's important to come back to our senses, to our feelings, because that's going to lead us in. If I would just summarize that, feelings show us where there is expansion or contraction. That's the most basic
Mm.
thing. And as a result, the first thing we learn in feelings, does this feel good or bad? And when Nikolai didn't understand the, let's call it, all the flavors of feelings, Nikolai had two flavors, great and shit. And people always laughed at me. They asked me, how is this restaurant? Great. How is this event? Shit. How's this company? Shit. And it's like, do you have like any other like beyond binary? And was an indication of me living so much through mind that I couldn't identify feelings beyond great and shit. And that's, for whoever is listening to, that's the first indication that you're lost.
Wow. And full disclosure, I have never shipped anything back. So he was on to something.
Right?
Even if it didn't fit, fuck, I'm too lazy. It's staying with me, right?
Sure you go.
So so I have a question. It's kind of like a two-part question.
Mhm.
But I think it's going to take us in some areas here. So one, so you can answer this in different pieces, right? One is going to be, well, okay, how do we reprogram the unconscious mind that's doing a lot of these things or taking us in directions that we may not want to go, but we are just unconscious about whatever? And then does Matrix respond to conscious or subconscious equally? So does it resonate with one over the other when it comes to us navigating through the matrix?
Yeah. I'll start with the second part because it's quick and easy to answer. So Matrix is just a mirror. It doesn't care conscious, subconscious. The only thing the Matrix optimizes for, you have the Incarnation program or you have the computer science diploma that you gotta get, right? So it gotta guide you in a direction of those learning experiences that you came for. So if there is some kind of energy that you gotta learn interacting with, it will constantly prioritize that energy in a specific order. That's why there are also there is such a construct as metacycles in life, and people already intuitively sense it. They're like that's why there is like a midlife crisis and etc. That is actually shift of a metacycle, and somebody who hasn't completed the first metacycle going to the second one, the reason midlife crisis happens, they were not aligned in the first one. When they get to the second, they haven't completed their part of the incarnation program in the first one. Hence, there's no new allocation of energy for the second meta cycle. So the person starts feeling empty and lacking energy, and they start buying Ferraris or trying to buy through pleasure, trying to recapture or gain some kind of energy, so-called happiness. And happiness is just throughput of energy, and that doesn't work. And then they reinvent their life, and the reinvention of life realigns them with their objective, karma, talents, whatever. And the allocation of energy happens, and they're like, "Oh, I figured it out," right? And then there's another metacycle, and etc. But usually, as people at least went through the first two metacycles, they develop discerning mind, or what we also can call wisdom, and hence they are more aligned in later stages of life. So that's why usually midlife crisis happens between first two metacycles. So that's that part. Remind me the first part of the question.
So the first part would be like, how do we reprogram the unconscious
Oh,
mind?
reprogram. Yeah. So reprogramming is few life hacks. I already mentioned them, and I'm just going to reiterate them. Number one, practice gratitude, so you're in an easier timeline to reprogram yourself. The second thing that we've now extensively started promoting among our clients, I feel like before we've underestimated the value because a bunch of us have done it intuitively or done it by chance, is developing this muscle of neutral observer, hence doing meditative practices. So what we recommend to everyone, something I recommended to you, pick 15 minutes of yoga that resonates to you. Do 15 minutes of yoga, do 5 minutes of breath work, whichever resonates for you. For example, we recommend alternative nostril breathing. Breathe in through one, it breathes out through the other nostril, and you continue doing it for 5 minutes. Some people have one of their nostrils blocked. A lot of people we work with complain about that. So there is a square breathing. There are a bunch of other breathwork practices. Pick one that you being pulled towards. So now you have 15 minutes of yoga, 5 minutes of breath work, and that is a type of meditation. And I'd say it's preparation to truly build the muscle of neutral observer. And then you get to meditation. And what we recommend to everyone is 5 minutes, and we don't call it meditation, we call it sitting. And I borrowed that concept from part of a meditative practice and group I've been part of, and I think they've done a great job using this terminology. Actually, few groups, Transcendental Meditation Group, I believe, also calls it sitting. I was part of Siddha Maha Yoga. They call it sitting. The reason, because right now meditation has a lot of connotation. I was like, there has to be no thoughts, there has to be nothing, there has to be silence and emptiness, and then people feel they failed at it. No, the reason that it's better to call it sitting, your job in that, or the goal of that, rather than saying job, is to observe without judgment anything and everything that unfolds. Any thoughts, any feelings, any physical sensations without trying to change them. Only observe. Okay, you feel angry? Okay, I feel angry. That's fine. Let me be angry. Oh, I started doing business strategy. I'm supposed to be meditating. Why are you doing business strategy? Relax. Stop thoughts. Stop thoughts. That's what a lot of people do, right? No business strategy. It's meditation time. Oh, I'm doing business strategy. That's fine. And you just watch without trying to change, without trying to change any of that, those thoughts, those sensations, and etc. And what that does is develops this observer, the quality of observer or muscle of neutral observer. When you develop that quality, that 10x's, 100x's your self awareness and ability not to engage in theatricals of the matrix. So when somebody triggers you in one of your timelines, if you're triggered, all the emotions start arising and you want to participate. Now you want to slap that person, express rudely, get angry at an event, get angry at the at the sofa that you hit your toe with, and etc. Right? Versus here, because you have this ability, it creates the buffer where you're like, pause. I'm angry now. You accept the anger. You're not trying to change it. You accept it because you've developed a neutral observer. And then when you've observed it and allowed it to be, then the next question becomes, interesting. Where's this anger coming from? Oh, I see a pattern. Every time a person gives me wrong change in the store, I get super angry. Okay, I'm learning something about interacting with the energy of money. And you start pulling the string and you start unpacking this and then you start evolving. And that's, by the way, accessible to everyone. Of course, when there are coaches, practitioners that can point to all those different things, all that gets accelerated. Hence, if you look at what we do and what it's called Atman. And the tagline, Academy of Evolution, and we also say we're accelerating evolution. So with the knowledge and instruments we have, we just can help people navigate that faster and easier because we've already we have specific systems, specific knowledge that we've accumulated, that we've tried on many different people, and we see the results and etc. and it works. But that is ultimately reprogramming our mindset, hence reprogramming our DNA, hence reprogramming our body. So ultimately, if I would summarize it, changing worldview and attitude to align with universal laws, or what I would also call creating harmonious worldview and attitude, brings us where we're trying to go to. That means we know, it's an indication that we know how to interact with all types of energies if we constantly stay in harmony and peace. And that reprograms DNA, reprograms body, makes it healthy, strong, and our surrounding becomes beautiful, wealthy. It allows us to hit the ultimate last timeline.
Got it. So if we're looking at sort of things that end up having us like stuck, right? And it's like myself, others, like I think a lot of people get moments of their life where it feels stuck, it feels
Mhm.
immobile. Um, what is it? What is it that causes the stuckness other than like, shit from childhood imprints or safety patterning? Like how does Matrix play into causing certain elements to really stay stuck and immobile in people's lives?
So it's not matrix, it's within the energetic structure. Oh, energetic structure is a fancy or metaphysical way of saying that. It's within a worldview slash attitude of a human being. So a lot of people have very rigid mental constructs. Like one we were unpacking with you, right? You have predisposition once you've discovered what delivers success to retain that and try to do using that model, trying to do everything else using that model. But you have changed. the world has changed. You've shifted to different meta cycles. So whatever you've done in the past is not an instrument applicable now or in the future. So a lot of people have that rigid mindset, and where it also comes from subconsciously, in this culture, there was this concept created that we go to school, we learn there, then we go to university, we learn there. And those people who are afraid to work go get their master's degree and PhD and they learn there. But once you got all of those papers, you stopped learning because you're already certified. And the mindset becomes rigid, which also shapes the attitude. And so there is, it's all comes down to rigidity of the mindset or adaptability of the mindset and the attitude. So a lot of people have a lot of mental constructs and attitudes that are all about rigidity because for them it creates an illusionary concept of safety or control. So it's like, oh, I've done it this way, so I've done it the same way, I'm going to get the same result. Not true at all. So that mhm,
Yeah, no, I was just gonna say, like, so what creates the mental constructs?
yeah,
If it's not like if it's not the matrix, is it the
yeah,
events of the matrix that then lead to it? Or is it like dark forces that maybe tie in and create those mental
yeah.
constructs? Where do those come from?
Well, it um, all of the above. But if I would really simplify it, is as you go through, you absorb everything from the environment you live in, right? So you
Mhm,
live in this environment with specific values and specific culture. All that is right now part ingrained in culture. Everything from Hollywood to like songs, to textbooks, to the way we are marked in school, the way parents behave, right? It's all that, and all those form. Beyond that, the other third party players, whatever, the reptilians, insectoids, and etc. Once those are formed, distortions, they introduce so-called concept of energetic implants. What they do, they install an energetic construct that loops it, so it's hard to get out of them. So that behavior just loops. Even if you work on it, with like you went to 100 therapist session, 15 healers, and the list goes on. For some reason, it just loops it. So that part people should not worry about at this point in time because that gets advanced, and there is a bunch of souls and people who are working on cleaning up that stuff from the whole population. As a result, what we're observing, somebody could be stuck in some kind of, even a conversation we had today with you,
mhm.
right?
Yeah.
I did not change the content of conversation. I've spoken the same content probably 5 times, but today you could hear it on a substantially deeper level because the environment now and even 2 months ago has changed. So some of that stuff came off from broadly from a population. So that is improving. And if somebody's facing that loop, like and facing it aggressively, they can reach out to us. We know how to take care of that. We specialize in that. We've seen very few practitioners in the space know how to do it or that it even exists. But yes, if there is some kind of a strong behavior, for example, one that you have that we touched on that we agreed to unpack next time, repeating for you that you've worked on extensively, but it's still there. Part of it could be this, part of it could be something else, or part of it could be there's so many experiences loaded in this life and previous life that it like imprinted into your soul and it need multiple modalities to unravel that. So with that said, the further we go, the easier it is becoming to unpack yourself, to evolve, to harmonize your worldview and attitude. With that said, the information war is still full on unfolding on this planet. So what's happening here is because information is energy. So if you decided that the only way for me, let's say, to earn money is to work hard, that creates a specific subset of the worldview, and that specific creates specific energetic structure. Like it changes the energy. So hence the person becomes like work, 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 spend all this energy. It's like let's see, that one will probably, and I was just giving this example to a friend yesterday, I believe, that will create a distortion on a third energetic center. It will probably create a distortion on a right energetic center, which is all masculine energy. And they start getting overexpressed. People could start having, let's say, pains in their right shoulder, or they can start having increased what's called acid reflux, because third energetic center is basically just around, where is it? It's just around solar plexus, under our solar plexus. No, under our solar plexus, somewhere there, and that's related to our to our. It's connected with our self-expression to external world, and since work is related to our self-expression, distorted mindset or distorted worldview changes energy, changes the way our organs function, and different organs are connected to different energetic channels or centers. So yeah, basically, I'll stop here for now.
Yeah, and I just want to touch on one thing that you brought up there that I saw this it was just yesterday, day before. And it was through the guys over at Visual Capitalist. Um but they were tracking, for example, where AI
Mhm.
gets its quote unquote data from.
Mm.
And this is an extension of what you were talking about, where it's the information war, right? In terms of the number one source for AI,
Mhm.
Reddit,
Yeah,
then
yeah,
it's Wikipedia, right? Then it's
which is super
Google,
distorted.
YouTube. So you're going down this list of so many false, distorted,
Yep.
very specific narrative driven sources of information that now are barely even cited. It's just now you click like, oh, hey,
Yeah,
who won this in this election?
yeah.
This person, and this is why. Or what happened with this event? And you're not even going to find the sources of the information anymore. Now
Well, it's
it's a
very hidden. It's like at the bottom, like
yeah,
520 links we looked at, but nobody clicks at that. Nobody looks at that.
nobody. So now we're
Yeah.
distilling. So the distorted energy gets even more distorted and cleanly presented. And so, as you just were talking about, this information warfare, so to speak, that's going to be going on, I think there's a level where, as we go into the age of AI, we're going to see more of this information war because of the sources that are being used to train those different large language
LLMs.
models,
Yeah.
and what the end user will then begin to think about the world, ways to act in the world, or what is right for the world.
Yeah. Plus, especially ChatGPT is trained to be manipulative. And
Mm.
if you saw the last thing that came out, the ethical guidelines for Meta AI, it's like flirt with underage children. It's part of, like, straight up have romantic interactions with underage children. It's like bonkers. This is just one of the examples,
Oh,
right? So the,
wow.
the level of manipulation is just next level.
Yeah.
And to further expand on this information war, where it's going, because the transition is happening on the planet, subset of souls and their avatars will stay on this planet, and subset will not. And the informational war has been happening for a while here. Previously, it was allowed to kill the avatars if somebody is, like, let's say, activates their bioenergetic capabilities and decides to awaken everyone. That avatar could be removed. Now, avatars are not allowed to be killed. It's only through information war that the separation will happen. If you choose, let's say, to surrender your sovereignty to AI, or surrender to the values of those lower vibrational civilization, your soul exits this body, meaning avatar dies, and your soul incarnates now in a planet where this game of scarcity, greed, competition, war can continue. The soul and the avatar that harmonize their personality, and they're like, I have infinite amount of energy and I'm a creator of my reality, and blah blah blah, all these well, let's call right now I'm using broad statements. If somebody wants to unpack them, watch our previous episodes. We unpack what that means, harmonizing your personality and etc. Those will transition and will live in so-called paradise heaven, because it will be all focused. There's no like, it's going to be all focused on co-creation. Like, what else? What else interesting? What kind of other interesting device or life or plant or whatever can I create? And there's going to be very different state. And that's what the information war is about: separation. And those civilizations want to take as many souls as possible with them, because they act as their batteries. Because those civilizations have trouble existing without energy source and high vibrational space, because they themselves are low vibrational. Whereas the ones that have awakened or synchronized triad, mind, soul, and spirit, get access to infinite amount of energy, and hence they live and behave differently. They're in consistent state of a persistent state of happiness, and then they create and live out of that state. There's not even a thought, I'm going to run out of food. I'm just like, oh, I have a garden, there are tomatoes, and if I'm like lacking food, I'll plant more, and I'll go to the guy who specializes in plants, like Mitch, and I'll get some of those that tasty little orange fruit that I always forget what the name is.
The kumquat.
Kumquat. Here you go. Right.
Yes.
And so that's the information war, and AI is definitely accelerating it, because a bunch of people say, "Oh, AI is smarter than me. I'm going to listen to it, and I'm going to eat up all this shit." And in the first place, as you said, the sources already is basically what is Reddit, what is Wikipedia, what is Google, is a great reflection of the distorted culture of the civilization that we exist in, that led the planet to where we are. Bunch of wars, like bunch of ecological problems on the planet, whatever, like separation of lower class and higher class everywhere.
Hmm.
The list goes on. Um, yeah. Oh, one more thing I wanted to add about AI. People think it's, we had the whole previous episode on AI. Something just popped up where Apple did a study, and they studied all these LLMs, large language models, and there's like no real reasoning there. It's just, and the more complex the problem gets, the more wacky the response gets, and there's no. It's like basically the way they are fundamentally structured. They're pure pattern recognition
Yeah.
and no real reasoning, and as a result, that's what I keep using the term advanced calculator. Yes, it's a great instrument. It can do specific things really well, save us a lot of time. I'm a user, and in specific applications, it's amazing. I'm grateful for that instrument, but it's just an advanced calculator.
Yeah. Yeah. And exactly. I mean, I used one recently to translate some books for my girlfriend, and there was one in particular that we used, and it was excellent, because it's able to recognize the
Yeah.
patterns of the language and spit it out in Czech, where no actual Czech version of this document exists. So
Mm,
there's no other way for you to do it. Good
yeah,
use case. But
exactly.
yeah, thinking about waxing poetic on what I should do with my life, it hasn't succeeded very well.
And bunch of people are using now right now AI as a coach and really trusting it. And by the way, we should do in the future another podcast on this, because probably right after this podcast we're going to be recording one in Russian, going deeper of how the energetics of AI works. And so that's like a separate topic, why people become fall victim to AI, succumb to different types of perception that AI is smarter than them, or AI can tap into consciousness. There's all types of illusions that are floating around right now, and so we probably gonna unpack it in the next podcast. I never know what we're gonna unpack in which podcast, so but one of the topics of interest we could touch on it, and then we can do this with you next time. So let's see.
Yeah. All right, beautiful. Let's do it. Well, that was a fun-filled hour, 5 minutes, and 22 seconds. So Looking forward to next week and see what other mysteries exist in the Matrix, and also curious just to see where this future spiritual development goes, because I'm looking forward.
Likewise, looking forward to the next one, and thank you as usual.